Good Friday afternoon to everybody. How you doing?
Hello.
There's Victor. I actually saw him. I didn't hear him yet. So until I hear him, I can't say that he's here. If Victor falls down in a forest, does he make a sound?
I don't go to the forest.
Or you're still in lockdowns, right?
No, even without lockdown, simply it's not comfortable. I like to be somewhere where I can get a drink or eat something at any time.
Okay. By the way, if you're new here with us today, or if you're watching on replay, thanks for hanging out with us. My name is Darren Pope. To my right is Victor Fartik. Okay, wait. We actually recorded a podcast this morning. Have I been saying your name wrong all these years?
No, I'm not really paying attention to what you're saying, so you might have been.
You're just ignoring me. Okay. Anyway, we're the host of a podcast called DevOps Paradox, and on Fridays, typically, we do this live stream and talk about the things of the week and whatever else is going on. So we always kick off the day with a fine vintage of orange today for me. I believe you have a Coca-Cola today.
Yep. Those of you wondering,
victory.
I'm not sick. It's just that I have no beer. That's the reason.
Oh, you're out of beer. So you're going into the deep stash right now.
Yeah, I need to go shopping after this.
Yeah. What's up, Vladislav? Good to see you again this week. Let's talk about. Did I update my notes? I did. Show 99. Should DevOps engineers need to know how to code? I don't even remember if that was the title or not, but it was something like that. It was so ridiculous.
Go ahead. If I answer that question, then nobody will listen. They have a need to listen to the episode, right?
Right. But we already know the answer. Or do we?
I mean, there's the word dev in ops.
There's another question that is answered or asked and answered, I guess, in the episode. So if you haven't listened to it yet, go do that. It's actually one of our shorter episodes, thankfully, because I didn't have a whole lot of time to edit it. So adjust the volume. Is that on me? It may be me. I have a new interface.
You need to say Darin or Victor and up or down.
Yep. So I am turning up right now, and hopefully that's better. And because I don't hear myself at all, I just see meters. So hopefully that's it. So anyway, the podcast for this week. Since this is 99 this week, next week is 100, and I haven't started editing it yet. Darren up. Okay. So let me see if I go a little bit more. How about that? And I will wait for an answer in the next few seconds. I think that's okay. I'm not very quiet or very loud today, so I'm a little off today. So let's see here. Let's kick that out and let's move over to the news. I saw somebody ask in the Slack channel this week about chaos. And right about that same time, this came out. To where AWS now has entered the chaos market, if you will.
Yeah. Nice. Haven't had time to play with it yet, but it's nice. Now, I don't know. Is it only on their services, not really what's happening inside of those services? I'm guessing, right?
You know, I haven't gone into it either. It says across a range of AWS services. So I'm guessing that it only applies to anything running there. Now,
yeah, it says actually. EC2, EKS, ECS, cool. RDS.
Should be interesting. This is the one thing I didn't look at was the pricing on it. So the pricing is based on duration that an action is active. 10 cents per action minute. Okay. So for the example is if you run 2 actions, it takes 20 minutes plus 1 action that took 10 minutes. That's 50 action minutes and it cost you $5.
Yeah, you know.
That'd be interesting.
All those prices, I really have no feeling how cheap or expensive they are until I use them for a while.
So I did see it was available in the CLI already, and was just thinking through ideas of how I could use that through just different angles from an automation perspective is what I'm getting at. So, anyway, it's about time that AWS has something now. The question is, Google doesn't have something like that, do they?
Yes, they don't.
They do?
And no, they don't, as far as I know. And I don't see them doing something like that, really. Because if they do something like that, they're going to make a project that might be slightly better with Google. Whatever they do always works better in Google, including Kubernetes. But I don't see them doing something that is a service specific to them. If they do, usually the pattern behind how Google operates is almost always the same. Like take Google Cloud Run as example, right? They first made Knative, works everywhere, and then they build a service on top of it, right? So whatever, in advance what they're going to release service of by looking at which projects they open source, or at least make public.
Right. So if you're in AWS, might be something to look at. Another way to waste money with AWS. That's what we should title this one. Because you could let this one run out of, 10 cents per minute, that could get expensive.
Those tests shouldn't be running for hours.
Right.
Minutes, rather.
Yep. I wonder if I could use that fault injection to use this new feature, which is you can now exec into a container running inside of Fargate or EC2, whether it's ECS or some other flavor. You could do this if you were running EKS cluster, right? Right? Because you could always do kubectl exec, right? So this is just a variant of kubectl exec.
Yes.
Now, whether you should or not is another question.
But it's kind of, I'm very surprised that they did that for Fargate, because they're supposed to manage your clustering, guarantee uptime and what's not, right? And then, if anything, they should be making sure that you cannot do that.
Yeah. So to me, it makes it easier to debug issues and diagnose errors. Okay, if you're logging in to do that or execing in to do that, you didn't architect your application correctly. Now,
yes.
Here's where it's valuable, collecting one-off dumps and statistics. Collecting one-off dumps. I'll stop there. Because again, statistics should be externalized anyway.
Yeah, and I don't understand why would you do that with exec? Collect, maybe one-off dumps. But in general, dumps, statistics, and all those things should be happening, not waiting for you to do exec into a container.
Correct.
One of dumps, maybe.
That's what I'm saying. The one I'm highlighting right now, to me, is the only one that's even valid of the list of 5 here. Because the other, debugging issues, diagnosing errors, statistics, and interacting with process. Why are you wanting to interact with a process in a container?
Unless, it depends really what we're talking about. If you're talking about dev environment or some staging environment, yes. Hey,
right.
I have nothing against that. If we reach production, that should be legal. Absolutely legal to do.
How is that any different than logging into a production VM? There is no difference. It's exactly the same. You don't give people the ability to SSH into your production servers, do you? Well, you might.
Nope.
But you shouldn't.
But that's, you can see, if you compare that with Autopilot, which we spoke about, right? Autopilot guarantees SLA of your containers, not only of their infrastructure. And the only way they can do that is by not allowing you to do those things. Maybe it should be maybe some special case. Hey, you can allow you. I allow you to do Fargate if you sign this paper that says it's not production, something like that.
Right. It'll be interesting to see how the security or the IAM policies. So you can use an IAM policy, so that's good. And once provided, you can audit which user accessed the container using CloudTrail. But see, this whole section right here, that can't be a one-click. I mean, I want it to be a one-click, but I'm sure it's not. I probably have to compose this thing together.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm wrong.
Doesn't excite me.
Yeah. Well, no, it does excite me because at least now you have an option. Because up to this point, you had nothing. You had to work. Yeah. You had to work your butt off to do all these things. Now you have options. I would rather have options and save them as which is what they have right here, a break glass procedure. Like,
okay.
So, right. So for me, it's like, okay, great, I got these, but I'm not going to use them. It's a break glass. This is like going into the nuclear codes, and we have two keys on two different people on other sides of the room, right? It's got to be that level of why are we doing this?
Depends also how you interpret, right? That could be a valid interpretation. Hey, this is in case of emergency, if I understood right what you're saying, right? But you can also interpret it as, hey, so now we have less motivation to do the right thing. I'm often in favor of actually having less options if having less options is going to force you in a way to do the right thing.
It's like working on a cattle farm. They're out in the pasture, it's all good, but when they need their shots, you have to send them down the chute. And the chute is, you got to go down that rail in order to get your shots. So, weird example for right now.
Yeah, but that's it. My summary is, okay, why not?
Yeah, okay. Speaking of why not, why so long? You can now export gcloud into Terraform. gcloud alpha, resource config, resource format, Terraform. Now, further down in this thread, and the links to everything today will be down a little bit later, probably today. I'll try to get it out today. There is documentation already for this. So it's holy cow, right? Why hasn't this been here all along?
To me, what is impressive with that, good with that, like, let's say, not that much that we got this. I think that there were means to do it before as well. But more that how Google is really deciding to support, in a way, integration between them and other popular projects, right? I cannot imagine having equivalent command in AWS. I cannot imagine that happening. Somebody creating a separate project like gcloud, and eventually that project being sponsored by AWS, yes, right? Yep. But I cannot imagine having this in AWS CLI.
Yeah. I think that's the key part here. This is baked into the gcloud CLI.
Exactly. That's the impressive part to me.
Yeah. So, this was the next impressive thing this week. And I saw a lot of chatter about this. This isn't K9's, it's K9sAlpha, which equates to pay me money.
I was so disappointed with that conversation in Twitter.
It was, people need to eat. Not just you. Right?
Yeah, I mean, kind of that whole expectation that a successful, bigger than tiny open source project does not need financing is just, it's almost silly. I cannot recall a successful, bigger open source project that doesn't have dedicated people working on it. That is purely 100% volunteering whenever I have time and willingness.
Right.
I never saw that. I'm not saying that there isn't such a project, but it's more of an exception, right? And if you have dedicated people who are working 100% for that on that project or close to 100, then you need to pay those people, right?
Yep.
And majority of people screaming in those cases, kind of, hey, you are killing open source, you are anti-open source and stuff like that. Most of those people are actually getting their salaries from other places, right?
Right.
So now the part of conversation, so the whole conversation about they shouldn't do this, they're traitors to open source and stuff like that, to me is silly. Now there is another part of that conversation in Twitter that says $100 and $200. I think that those are the two prices. I'm not sure. One is 100 for sure. 100 and some more than $100 for a license. To me, that's a mistake. Charging money for that is not a mistake. It's fair game. $100 is just too much for such a small tool.
Right, because I think I pay, now this is not commercial, but I pay for my subscription to JetBrains. So I get the all-you-can-eat JetBrains.
Okay.
And I'm paying out of my pocket, and I pay about 140 or 150 US a year.
Okay.
And that gives me all the tools. It gives me all the tools. I get PyCharm and IntelliJ and you name it. I get them all. I get the whole thing. I don't get TeamCity. I don't get a couple of the other JetBrains things. But from an IDE perspective, I get them all.
That's what I'm saying. If you put that in comparison, whatever you're paying for JetBrains, let's say that the K9s cannot be more than 10%, and I'm being very generous right now.
Yeah. Well, if you think, so here might be the twist. So let's go to Adobe, because Adobe products are probably, depending on which one you get, if you get the all-you-can-eat, it's what, $50, $60 a month for the full suite of Adobe products. If you buy just one, I think the cheapest one is probably 10 a month, 10 to 20 a month. So in that case, $100 isn't that big of a deal for a single application. But
yeah, but the scope of this application is relatively small, right?
It is, but let me be on their side for a moment, because I haven't seen the numbers. But let's assume that it averages out to $10 a month. Mm-hmm. Does K9sAlpha give you 2 coffees worth of value a month?
It does. For many people, it does. But you cannot, if you compare it with coffee, then yes. But if you compare it with other things you're paying, let's put it this way. If I pay, what did you say, $10 a month for every CLI that I use often, I'm not going to say every CLI, but every CLI that I use often, I would easily get to what, like $500? Easily.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, yes, if you say, does it pay coffee? Yes, but K9s is not the only thing I'm using or anybody's really using. I'm just saying that compared to other things you're paying, it might be too much. Like, if you told me, and I even believe that actually lower prices would give them more money. If they said, hey, $25 a year, I would pay it right now, immediately after this. 100, I'm already thinking, hey, I have a bunch of things that I need to pay, right?
Well, let me put it this way. I think I'm with you. If it was 20 or 25, that's no big deal annually. 100 makes me start to think, and I don't see a comparison here of K9s versus K9sAlpha to tell me the reason why I want to pay. I don't see a feature set here that tells me why I need to purchase.
It's even more complicated than that, because I don't know if you can find the pricing here, K9sAlpha store. There is one for $200. So kind of like, are we now talking about 100? Are we talking 200? Am I going to be missing things because I paid only 100? Kind of, at least. So actually, if I want the full feature set, whatever the feature set is, which I don't know yet what it is, but whatever it is, then I am actually already talking about $200.
Let's see what it is. So K9's upgraded code base with many issue performance improvements. Here, let me zoom this in. Access to all resources, resource list limited to 20 entries, maintenance updates, issues and fixes, Kubernetes release update. And then, what's the 200 one?
I mean, you know,
the only thing
really,
I see here right now is unlimited resource.
Yes, I mean, you're not getting really value for your money compared to open source, because realistically, who is going to call support for K9s? Come on. Yeah? You're probably not going to start opening support requests and stuff like that. It's more about supporting, it's not about features, it's more about supporting the project than feature sets, really.
Yeah.
At least until they give me a real clear, you get this. So until I get clearly what I'm getting, it's supporting the project. And for supporting a project, hey, $200, it's a bit too much.
Yeah.
So, but I'm fully in support of them charging money, having some income.
Yeah.
That I'm fully in support of.
Yep. Well, and it gets back to if they're going to charge money for basically a subscription, it's not worth their time to charge $25 a license, in my opinion. 100 might be. But because if I can get one person to buy 100, that means I'd have to have 4 people, which could potentially give me 4 times the amount of support tickets versus 1. Right? So
yeah, but
pricing is hard.
It sounded like, hey, we need to generate some income, and I understand that perfectly. And then what can be slapped randomly on top of it, to make that happen? But
yeah,
I wish them luck. I want them to succeed.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, from your perspective, is this still the best one?
Yeah, that's my favorite Kubernetes dashboard, no doubt, hands down. But you know me, I'm probably not representative. My life is, I have a happy life if I don't leave my terminal, ever. But many are not like that, probably.
And if you don't know what K9s is, it's basically the links of Kubernetes management. If you don't know what links is, you're not old enough to be here. Did I say that out loud?
Yes, you did. Cool.
New Copilot. I just threw this in here primarily. What was funny is this announcement for Copilot came out, and they were talking about service exec and task exec. I went, oh, that's interesting. I can get an interactive shell. And then 2 days later, the AWS exec announcement came out. So I was looking at this going, what is this about? And then it was like, oh, now it makes sense. To me, that was the only thing that was big. There were a handful of bug fixes, but I need to go back through the issues and see if they've got our other thing on the board yet or not. I won't do that here. So Copilot, still free. Probably will always be free since it's coming from AWS. This one was... my head exploded when I saw this. Running OSX in a Docker container. Now, how illegal this is, I'm not a lawyer. But in theory, it works. Talking to some people. I'll leave it at that. And I am not the people.
This is something that can solve a lot of problems for many companies. OSX, is always a painful thing to test.
Yeah, this
right?
is the one right here. That one right there. I'm not going to say it out loud. It's just highlighted.
Yeah. Now, how many companies that are, excluding tiny companies, are going to use this? Probably close to zero. Yeah. It's amazing that, but it will not be greatly used because this screams legal action.
Yes.
Right. And Apple is very complicated. I might be wrong, but if I remember correctly, you can have if you use virtualized OS, you can have up to 2 instances of your OS per license or something like that. So for every 2 instances, you need a license. I might be wrong, so don't take it for granted.
Said if you're doing Mac, based on a couple of people I talked to that are using it, they said it for what they're using it for, it works. They're doing iOS builds specifically.
It's a lifesaver.
Yeah. I wouldn't bet the farm on it though. That would be too high risk for me. I would say just go buy the M1 Mac Mini, but not everything runs there yet. So, but once everything does run there, just go buy a rack of those.
Or use a service. What was it? Mac Stadium?
Mac Stadium is one. Well, now you can even get Mac Minis through AWS if you're on AWS.
Yeah.
So it's expensive, but if you only need it a certain amount of time, then you have to. I think with the Mac Minis on AWS, you have to pay for a full day at a time. It's
I think that's probably not even AWS doing, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's simply the lowest that they could charge to comply with Apple licensing fees.
David, I will drop the link to it in the chat. Sorry, I wasn't looking over there. So now in the chat, there's the link off to that repo. All the links will be down in the description afterwards. I saw this right before we went on today. SQLfuzz. Have you ever had to prime data into a database?
Prime data into the database? Oh, okay.
I've got a blank data. I've got a blank database. So now what you can do is basically run it, and here's the example. So it only works with MySQL and Postgres for the moment, which for most of us that are here today, that's probably at least a reasonable time. And you go off and say, hey, give it a username, a password, the database, where it's at, point it at the table and say, hey, I want, what was N? N was number of rows and number of current workers. So to me, this almost feels like Apache Bench for SQL or any of the other small load testers.
But usually it's much more complicated than that, right? When you're testing, you want to, I don't know, like it's a name, it needs to start with a capital letter, it cannot be less than this number of characters. If this is for testing, which I assume it is for testing, yes, for testing purposes, usually data needs to be random, but still generated based on something, right? Kind of random names, random numbers, random 4 digits for zip codes, or whatever that something is.
Yeah. It's still fairly new, just a couple weeks old. New release came out yesterday, whatever yesterday was, Thursday. So looks like they're getting active with it a little bit more. So if you're trying to load up data, this might be something to see what happens.
Yep.
Drift control or driftctl or however you want to say CTL. Why? I mean, I know why. And especially since it only covers AWS and Terraform. Let's stick out on Terraform for just a second. Terraform already has drift. detection.
Yeah, but this is slightly different. This is a drift between the things that you defined with Terraform and things that you did randomly.
Right.
So it's kind of, hey, I created this, and that with Terraform, but somebody then I willingly gave access to my account to you, and you did additional things, and I want to know what those additional things are. And to me, that sounds amazing, kind of on a first look. And then when I started thinking about it, so what they're trying to solve, if I understood right, is, hey, there is a part of our organization that is doing creating resources manually. And I want to know what is the drift between what is managed by Terraform and what is managed by random people in random ways. Cool. And then I will get a list of, I don't know, 10, 100,000 million resources not managed by Terraform. And so far, so good. And then what? That's my question. Then what? What do I do then? And if you follow that instructions on that side, you can say which of those resources to ignore. In reality, what will happen is that you will put all the resources that are not managed by Terraform to be ignored, right? Because you're going to go to Joe and ask, hey, did you create S bucket? Yes. S3 bucket? Yes. Do you need it? Yes. Okay. So ignore from the drift. And you, did you create this? Yes. Did you need it? Yes. Ignore from the list, right? It's just a different way to ignore stuff. I'm not sure I see it. If that's the problem, if it's a problem that there is a drift between what you do with Terraform and what you do manually, the solution is to do those things with Terraform then, not to do it manually. Kind of that's the solution. Now, in AWS, this is slightly more complex than in Azure and Google Cloud. In Azure Google Cloud, you can say, hey, here is a resource group, here is a project, you can do stuff there. We don't have such a thing in AWS. And if we would, then I could be able to say, okay, I'm going to wipe those things from my system a month later, right? Or to review them or whatever. But AWS doesn't have such a concept, doesn't have a concept of a project or resource group or anything like that would allow me to say, hey, all of you doing things that you shouldn't be doing, at least this is where you're doing them.
Well, I disagree with you. There is a way to do that. You just have to set up roles or separate accounts. It's separate accounts is what it amounts to.
You would need to create separate accounts. Huh?
Yes. Yeah, you create separate accounts inside the one parent account.
Yeah, but then, okay, here's a task for you. How do you destroy the resources that are separated one way or another? How do you do that?
You have to go in and destroy each one of them one by one.
Exactly.
That's the painful part.
That's the part I like about resource group and project in Google, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I can destroy it. Otherwise, in AWS, and when you look at it from that perspective, this drifting is potentially useful because at least it can give me a list of the things that are not managed by Terraform, assuming that by Terraform, I mean, this is official, this is the real deal, and this is random stuff that we don't really need. If that's how you separate things, then at least gives me the list of the stuff I might need to consider removing, I don't know, or something with it.
Yeah.
Now, there is another...
No, go ahead.
There is another type of drift between what Terraform does manage and what the actual state is, which is similar to Terraform plan. And I think that this tool has a missed opportunity. It runs periodically. I'm not sure what, let's say once an hour or whatever the frequency is. And if it detects drifts, then maybe it should actually execute Terraform apply to fix those drifts among the drifts that are managed by Terraform.
Right. Which leads us into the first video for this week.
Okay, here's a summary. If you don't want to think about whether you're making the right choice or a wrong choice, you use Terraform and it's a no-brainer. It's absolute. It works. Support, everybody's using it. Bunch of instructions. It's a no-brainer. If you want to put a bit of risk into what you're doing, then Crossplane, because I have a strong suspicion that Crossplane will be the representative of a next-gen infrastructure as code tools. It has some features that are absolutely awesome, like drift detection and synchronization, which is absolutely amazing. And now somebody's going to offend. I don't see the advantage of using Pulumi, except if you're a person whose eyes go red if you see YAML or HCL or any declarative syntax.
Well, if you're a smaller shop and all you have are application developers and it's the CTO that's doing the infrastructure, then maybe, right? If it depends on what the skill set is.
Yes, but the list of the problems. If you look at, can you open some example, just very quickly, of just search Pulumi example, for example. Or yeah, go there, docs. Just get started. Get started on the right side.
On the right side or left? Oh, this one.
No, you see the big button, get started. Yeah, choose your cloud. Choose anything. Doesn't matter.
Choose cloud, AWS. Sorry.
Yeah, before you begin, go. Down. I create new project. I think that is the one after that. Yeah, you can continue there. Review the new project. Exactly. Now, if you choose goal, for example, just because I'm more familiar, right? Okay, this was a terrible example. Sorry for that. But basically, if you look at it, this is not simpler than to me than this would be a single line in Terraform. This new bucket that has no parameters. That's what it would be, right?
Well, you say it's a horrible example. I'm just gonna pick this one up.
Yeah, sure.
So I haven't looked at it. So I have to have 3 files here. So I have to have a main,
yeah,
not
and
outputs.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is. So there's.
Yeah, but this one has much more parameters.
Okay.
So it's not really.
Let me just go to. Let's just go to Terraform. Probably the cleaner way of doing it. Is this what you mean?
Yeah.
That. So if I compare that.
Okay, but look, you're comparing really the first line, the second line, and the last line.
These?
Because there is no, if you go to Pulumi example, there is no ACL and there is no tags, right?
Right.
So it's really, exactly.
This.
So all this is equivalent to those first 2 lines and the last line. Not even ACL.
Okay.
Not even ACL.
So it's that and that.
Not even tags.
Not even tags, so it's just this.
That and the last line, exactly. So this is equivalent to that, exactly. So how is that easier? Even if you, let's say that you know Go and you don't know the syntax of Terraform. Right?
I don't think easy is the argument, though.
More readable. Okay, we can go more readable, but kind of throwing, having separate lines for throwing errors is not really making it more easy to read.
Right.
Having to import the libraries is not really making it simpler or easier to read or what's not. I mean, those are all the things that you need to write because it's Go, okay, right?
Right.
But I don't see easier entry point for anybody.
Well, you did say there was one reason why you would want to use Pulumi.
Testing. Yes, absolutely. But now, testing is done most likely. So the example of small shop that you started initially, they're not going to do testing. Let's face it. So yes,
is it there? Yes, tested. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, but yes, if you want to do testing, sure, it provides a lot of benefits. It's simply easier to test something that you have in the same code base, in the same language.
In a real language.
In a real language.
HCL is not a language.
Yeah.
It's a spec. Is it a spec technically?
Yeah, it's DSL technically, I think.
It's a DS. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know if it went as strong as spec or not. Okay. And then the last video for the week.
It was I was thinking to remove it actually from YouTube. I wasted my time on it, and now I'm afraid that I might be wasting other people's time. It's the most horrible and useless tool that I explored in a long while.
Well, specifically for Kubernetes. You didn't explore the other sides of it, right?
So there is Kubernetes, Docker Swarm, and ACI. Now, and Docker locally. Now, why would anybody use that for Docker locally is beyond me. I cannot imagine. Why would you want to manage with something your local 3 containers running locally? No need, right?
Right.
Swarm, I don't want to talk about it. What Swarm? And ACI, again, Microsoft Azure offers me so much more of things that I can do with ACI through their console that I don't see it. Now, the way I understand it is that that tool was kind of useful when Swarm was a thing, and now Swarm is not a thing anymore. And they did not really redesign the tool, but kind of like wrapped it around Kubernetes, right? So, okay, it's a failed experiment. Swarm, we're not using it anymore. Almost nobody is using it. And you cannot just do the same thing you were doing for Swarm now in Kubernetes and say, now it helps you avoid potential disasters by applying all the Swarm fields into Kubernetes. Oh.
Yeah, I had one client that was using Portainer. I've lost track now. And they were happy with it, and they were using Swarm, so it made sense. But in today's world, it doesn't make sense.
It makes a lot of sense for Swarm, especially since there were not many options for Swarm, unless you go with Docker Enterprise. And I assume that they were using that mostly to avoid doing Docker Enterprise. Now, when we go into Kubernetes era, then actually the amount of tools and the things we do today is exponentially bigger, right? I can choose among, I don't know, like probably more than 100 different dashboards that will do things for me. And just like that one does. And some of them will allow me to deploy in a simpler way by specifying few arguments instead of more than a few. But what I'm really trying to say is that there are a couple of things that anybody who wants to be successful, I think, needs to take in account when doing something like this. First of all, is to avoid the problems that we had with Docker, and that is that being simple is not enough. It needs to combine simple for some, but still very powerful for others. Meaning that I cannot say you're going to manage your Kubernetes as if it's Docker and ignore that there are sysadmins in my company, right? I need to give them tools to do the right thing, to do the complicated stuff, and potentially those sysadmins or operators or whatever you call it might actually benefit from a tool that will make patterns for developers. So, hey, those are the things you need to worry about: image, number of replicas, few other things. But those are the patterns that might need to be created by people who are actually managing systems. So it cannot. Kubernetes is, to me, is a failure because it's too complicated for majority of people, and Docker is a failure because it doesn't give us what we need to have to run real systems. Now we cannot go into either extreme. We need to marry that complexity that Kubernetes has and build a layer that will simplify it, but without removing the good things in a way.
Sounds like
and
Dr.
if somebody
Storm
wants to simplify it, that's Knative. Knative simplifies it. Okay, this is an easier YAML to write. It allows me, I can go to Google Cloud Run and say, this is, actually, I can go to Cloud Run and have 1/3 of the parameters that I specify with Portainer, and still Google Cloud Run is going to do many more things Portainer doesn't do to me. So if I compare Google Cloud Run with Portainer, Google Cloud Run is at the same time easier for developers and still more robust and does more things that are required to run it for real successfully. So it covers both extremes, and while Portainer is somewhere in the middle, does not satisfy either group. I'm sorry, Portainer guys. I know at least one of you personally. I apologize.
Was there anything that you went, oh, that's not so bad?
No, not really. Not really.
Too bad.
I mean, it has, to begin with, as a developer, I need to specify, I mean, I have the options to specify some 30-ish fields. That's already too much for me. If you want to simplify it, it should, I'm looking more into having some sort of policies. Hey, you know, you specify the image and you tell me, is this stateful or stateless maybe, something like that. And then some magic somewhere happens and create a stateful set if it's stateful, you know, or deployment if it's not stateful, creates Knative something. I'm looking into, so what I'm really trying to say, I want somebody to simplify how we define applications without removing the good things, like horizontal pod autoscaler, instead of just converting fields into YAML. That's basically what Portainer does, is that the things that I would specify in a YAML file of a deployment, it allows me to specify as a set of fields. Any tool can do that.
And there we go. So do you think your Terraform video was the last of that series? At least for a while, probably.
Of that series, in what sense?
Well, you've gone through Terraform and Pulumi and all the others, and here you finally did the bake-offs. That's probably the end of that one for now.
It's the end of me talking for a while about Pulumi and Terraform. Now, I have plans, very high level, without knowing the details yet, to explore some of the subjects that I think are interesting with Crossplane. For example, OPA, Open Policy Agent.
Right.
If we combine that with Kubernetes resources, that's awesome. But if those Kubernetes resources are both applied to application and infrastructure, that sounds even better. I can say, hey, everybody can create Postgres service in Google or wherever, right? But you cannot go beyond this. That type of policy, then I can enable people. And OPA is almost perfect for that. But OPA really works well mostly with Kubernetes resources. And that's why I might jump back to Crossplane.
Right. I could see that also to where, hey, I want to create a stateful set application inside of my cluster. That would be a policy that would be disallowed, right? You'd have to get an exception for that if you needed to do something.
Or
right, that would be...
I'm morally...
No, go ahead.
I'm more interested into how we can enable people, in this case through OPA, to do whatever they want within limits. Like, for example, hey, you can create stateful set. That's okay. But I will not allow you to have more than 10 replicas and more than 20 gigs of memory and more than 10 CPUs. Kind of, those are the limits I give you, right?
Right.
And then go. It's okay for you to create a stateful set, but it cannot exceed those boundaries in a way, because then you would be affecting others.
Right. It's no different than maybe like shared web hosting, right? You get a slice of a server, right? That's so your OPA helps you do that easier, because at the end of the day, OPA is doing nothing more than, well, it's doing a lot more than, but it's doing nothing more than setting the right limits at a more meta level.
Exactly. It's kind of, I don't need the OPA. When I give you a user to access specific cluster, I can easily deny that user rights to create replicas, stateful set. I can easily do that. I don't need OPA or anything like that.
Right.
And I can easily allow you to create stateful set. But if I want to allow you to create stateful set, but not to do certain things within that stateful set, that's where OPA comes in, right? When we are defining not what you can and cannot do, but within certain resource, what are the boundaries?
Right. That aren't necessarily tied back to a resource. It's more of a business. It could be, but it's more of a business and or soft technical decision, not a hard technical decision.
To me, simplest example would be that I see no reason why anybody would ever create a Kubernetes service that uses node port. It should always be cluster IP and go through ingress. Right? Now, I can say one option is to me to say, hey, you're not allowed to create a service because it needs to be me so that I ensure that it is cluster IP and not node port. Or I can say, go ahead, create a service, but OPA will prevent you from using node port.
And then the application developer will whine about it, and then it's like, oh, okay. Because if you create a node port, you have to manage the node port.
Yeah, you're opening, basically. You're opening a hole into your system, right, for no good reason.
Yeah. Okay. Like I was saying earlier, the podcast episode 100 comes out next Wednesday. I have a lot of work to do to make that happen. But it'll be fine. 100. Can you believe it?
Oh, man.
And we're coming up on 1 year. We talked about it last week. I think April 3rd, 2020 was our first official live stream, based on what I found. So we did a couple other live streams before that, but this was the April 3rd, I think, was the first Friday one. So we're
getting
2 more weeks.
Anniversary.
Yep. And what else? And then you're working on videos for next week.
Yes, I do not.
You spun your office around it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I turned the office around.
I want to come back to your office, though. Our delay's a little off today. I want to come back to your office, though, in a minute. So go ahead and talk about your video stuff.
No, the only one that is almost certain that I will do is Kind for next week. Mostly because some of the things that I'm planning to do require Kind, then I always have that rule, kind of, if I'm introducing something, I better explain what that something is, type of stuff.
Now, in case you're watching today and you're looking at Victor's office and like, okay, where are the pictures? We don't see it. So basically it's the way you were sitting was spin back to where you were before. Like where you would normally sit. Rotate to your right, I think, right?
No, I was normally sitting there.
Right.
That's where the monitor is. That's where I was sitting.
Right. So the pictures
and
are.
Now,
the pictures are.
And now
you have your gaming.
And now I have my gaming, exactly. Arcade gaming setup where I was sitting. Yes.
We need to hook that up and stream that as well. That's probably not even possible for you. Which one is that one? Which console is that?
I don't remember anymore. I don't know. Something I bought in Amazon. A couple of thousand games. Everything.
Yeah. Oh, well. Okay, so I think we're probably going to wrap it. Next week, there may or may not be a show. Just regardless, I'll send out a tweet on Thursday, whichever way it's going to be. I just have some stuff I might have to do on Friday, just waiting on thumbs up or thumbs down. But probably more importantly, I'm getting a haircut tomorrow. It'll be the second haircut in a year. And it's like, I mean, I could go full on, let's see, can I get here? I could go full on flocks of seagulls if I wanted to. So
I have a new strategy that I have a baby beard, so it grows extremely. This beard is like 3 weeks, right? So extremely slow.
Right.
So every 4 weeks, I go to a barber and say, take it all off, hair, beard, everything. Like, that's my monthly thing now. That's why I'm bald sometimes.
Yeah, you probably still grow facial hair faster than I do, but it's funny though. I did notice here, if you're watching on camera right now, it's like, yeah, that's starting to reseed there just a little bit, but man, I got it right up top. It's still all right there. I have no idea what that has to do with DevOps, but is there such a thing as DevOps?
Didn't you hear? DevOps is absolutely everything. There is nothing that is not labeled DevOps, so it must be that must be DevOps as well.
So, in following that reasoning, if everything is DevOps, then nothing is DevOps. It's circular. Let's just do this. Vladislav set us right. Have a great weekend, people. Again, all the links for everything today will be down after a while. Well, I might try to get it in right after this. And if you got any questions, go over to the Slack workspace. That's crawling right around down there. And what else? I don't even remember anymore. Oh, subscribe. Or right now, since you're here right now, right underneath Victor, use your left hand. That's where the subscribe button is. Go click the subscribe button. And the like. Give us the thumbs up right now, too. We should have done the thumbs up earlier, but it doesn't matter. We're trying to game the algorithm a little bit, if there is such a thing as the algorithm. That's a whole other conversation.
It's DevOps.
Hey, wait, what game's on behind you right now? Which one is that one? Turn around.
I don't know. It's just random thing. Crouching tiger, hidden dragon. I don't know. There is absolutely everything.
That's funny. All right. Thanks, everyone, for everybody that was here with us live and everybody that's watching the replay. Thanks for hanging out with us. We will hopefully talk to you next week. If not, just be looking out in Twitter and LinkedIn. Thanks, everybody.